Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadrupam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya namane Gaura tishe namaha. Nityananda namastubhyam premananda pradayane kalo kalamashanashaya janava pataye namaha panchatattvatmakam krishnam bhaktarupa swarupakam bhaktavataram bhaktakyam namami bhakta shaktikam. He Krishna karuna sindho dina bandho jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I offer my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astotar Sata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And then I offer my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astotar Sata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astotar Sata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So today was a very special day. It's the appearance day of Sri Radha Ramanji. Yeah. Who is Radha Raman? Who is he?
He has all three forms.
Yeah. Combining Radha Govinda, Radha Gopinath and Swami. he was worshipping Shalagram Shilas, and he had a box that he kept them in. And the other Goswamis had manifested the other deities, and they were receiving gifts of cloth and garments and so forth. And then Gopal Bhatta Goswami had some desire in his heart. Like, if only my deity had arms and legs, and then I could dress and I could decorate. So when he came the next morning, which was on this day, I guess it's a full moon day, the actual appearance, that then he opened up his box to do the puja, and that place is there at the Radharaman temple. When you come in the front gate, and then you turn to the left to go to Gopal Bhatta Goswami's Samadhi. Before that, there's another building and a gate, and it's mostly closed. But there's a big mandap there, and that's the exact place where Gopal Bhatta Goswami opened up the box, and Radharamanji was there. So that deity of Radharamanji is very, very dear to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And he's the only deity that never left Braj. And the reason why is because he was small size. And they made some special arrangement to keep him hidden when the Muslims had attacked. So there's also a fire there that I have heard has been burning ever since Radharamanji appeared. And that fire is the wood fire that is used for cooking. It has never gone out. They keep it going.
I saw it. It was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And the deity worship there is very, very high standard. And very sweet. So much sweetness there. Actually, you know that they built another temple for Radharamanji. Did you know that?
Wait a long time.
Not too long ago. No, not too long ago. They built another temple. You go by it all the time. There's a gate and an entrance. It has like a big arch. Most people don't know that that was built for Radharaman.
But you never went there?
I'm explaining. So like when you come from Loy Bazaar, and you come down that pathway, and then you have to turn right there, right? You have to turn right and then go to Radharaman temple from there, right? But when you come to the end of that road, just before you turn right, there's a big archway there. If you walk inside there nowadays, there's some few shops, you know, like temporary stands selling food and things like that. But when you go all the way, it's a big area. It's a quite large courtyard area, very large. And then at the very end of that, there's this temple structure that was built for Radharaman. You can go inside. You can see how they used all expensive marbles and this and that. So the question comes, why didn't he move? Take a guess.
It's too heavy.
No. Not from his side. The Goswami family who worship him, they did not feel comfortable that they would have to walk so far from where they live to go and do the puja. Because that temple that he's in now, you know, it's not one of the original temples of Vrindavan, like Radha Govinda temple or Gopinath and all of those, you know. So, but anyway, it sits empty because of that. So the question is,
The Goswami family didn't want to have if there was any indication from Radharaman.
that I've never heard. The only explanation I heard was that they didn't want to move. I don't know the details of the history, of course, and who even financed it and all that. But it's one of the most, valuable, right not far from the Yamuna River, Anyway, today was also Parameshwari Thakur, we read in the morning, and then also his disappearance day.
That's the only person. We didn't read about him in the morning.
Or wait, what was the...
Maybe not during our class, but we read about him in the Bhagavatam class.
Oh, in the Bhagavatam, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, you're talking about the earlier class.
Yeah.
Oh, who was in the earlier class?
Madhavendra Puri and Bhakti Srila Swami Maharaj.
Oh, okay, so you in the Bhagavatam class, you...
Srinivasacharya.
Yeah, Srinivasacharya, Madhavendra Puri. So that leaves Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj for me to read. And so, this is from the book My Beloved Masters by Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Goswami Maharaj. The first section is titled, Full Surrender Means Leaving Nothing Behind. Full surrender means leaving nothing behind. How is that? Prior to joining the Mutt full-time, Srila Goswami Maharaj, then known as Sri Atula Chandra Bandopadhyay. That Bandopadhyay is quite a high-level name in Bengal. Atula Chandra. So prior to joining the Mutt, he worked for the Indian Railways, which provided him with a stable residence. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada once visited and stayed there for 3 days in 1921. As a result of his divine association during that 3-day visit, Sri Atul Chandra Bandopadhyay decided to dedicate his life to serving the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Following the principle of the verse, Gurum e Tadvigyanartam sa Guru eva vigachchet samit pani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. That's one of the main verses for Praman of the necessity of accepting Guru. So here it's said in that verse that Savigyanartam sa gurum eva abhigachchet. Abhigachchet actually means compulsory. To understand, tad vigyanartam, to understand this knowledge, vigyan artam, then sa guru eva abhigachchet. One absolutely must approach Guru. Then it says, Samit Pani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. Samit Pani means bringing with him anything required for performing yajna, to become initiated and so forth. Samit Pani, bringing in his pani in his hands. Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. There are 2 adjectives here that are describing the quality of that guru who you must approach. Number 1, Shrotriyam. He has heard perfectly from his guru, Shrotriyam. He is fully realized and learned in the Vedic knowledge. Shrotriyam comes from the word Shruti and so forth. Shravanam. And Brahmanishtam. Brahmanishtam means absolutely realized of the supreme absolute truth, Brahma, Parabrahma, Krishna. Nishtam, completely situated, unshakable. Those are the 2 main qualities. So it says here, following the principle of the verse, Gurum eva vigachchet, from the Mundaka Upanishad, he understood that upon approaching Sri Guru, He understood that upon approaching Sri Guru, one ought to surrender oneself completely without returning home for anything. Therefore, he packed all his household items, his table, his chair, his bureau, and so on a truck, and he brought them to the mutt. He did not leave anything behind so as to ensure he would never have to revisit his house to settle pending matters. This is just the beginning of his personality. You know, I remember reading this for the first time 2 years ago, 3, I forget when. I'd never known anything about him. Only I knew that, you know, he was one of the persons that went to the West, but I didn't know anything at all about him. But when I read this, I fell in love with him. I really did. So now the next section is titled The Dear Associate of Srimad Mahaprabhu. This is what I was mentioning. Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay and Sri Srimad Bhakti Prakash Aranya Goswami Maharaj, they visited many homes and offices to collect donations. This is one of his big sevas, collecting donations. And the way he went about this is amazing. So, along these two personalities went to many homes and offices to collect donations and to find new subscribers for the Gaudiya Mutt's weekly magazine titled Gaudiya. In those days, Gaudiya was publishing Srimad Bhagavatam in installments, and often including pictures of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and other Vaishnava acharyas. And one day a person asked Srila Aranya Goswami Maharaj, Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be non-different from Bhagavan. And why then have you included pictures of mortal humans on its same pages? He's referring to the pictures of the acharyas. So for whatever reason, Srila Aranya Goswami Maharaj kept silent. And so Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay gave an eloquent yet assertive reply. You have not fully understood the special divine characteristics of Grantha Bhagavat, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhakta Bhagavat, the devotee of Bhagavat. Nor have you learned the purports of the many essential verses that describe the nature of devotees, such as Sakshad Haritvena Samasta Shastra, Uktastata Bhav Yata Eva Sadavi, Kintu Prapuya Priya Eva Tasya, Pande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. He goes on. The scriptures unanimously proclaim Sri Guru to be Sakshat Hari, directly Sri Hari. This is a fact jointly corroborated by all saintly persons. Yet, at the same time, Sri Guru is very dear to Bhagavan. I adore the lotus feet of that Sri Gurudev. So then, how then will it be possible for you to comprehend that the photographs published in Gaudiya are not of ordinary persons, but they are of very special, self-realized personalities? Moreover, it will be difficult for you to understand that because of their eternal relationship with Bhagavan, these liberated persons are non-different from him in the same way that Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from him. He ended the discussion by remarking, I am from a Brahmin family, so high that 14 generations of your family would consider themselves grateful if but one of them happened to drink water from a place where I had passed urine. He used this in his preaching. But for some reason, you are questioning the master at whose feet I have offered my head, as well as the magazine that I have come to distribute. So in the evening, Srila Aranya Goswami Maharaj recounted the story to Srila Prabhupada. And he told Srila Prabhupada that although he was unable to answer the man's question, Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay, who was relatively new to the mutt, gave an apt reply. And upon hearing this, tears flowed from Srila Prabhupada's eyes. And he said, Sriman Mahaprabhu has sent one of his close associates to assist us. I don't think he often said that about any. We have heard that Sriman Mahaprabhu and his associates appeared before Srila Prabhupada, and they assured him, that's when he chanted his 1 billion names, they all appeared in front of Srila Prabhupada. And they assured him that they would provide both the means and the manpower required to spread Shuddha Bhakti among the masses. So in the above-mentioned pastime, Srila Prabhupada confirmed that Mahaprabhu himself had sent his dear associate, Sri Srimad Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. This is his picture when he took sannyas, or near that time. He was very tall, very large.
Looks like Chitananda.
Like who?
Chitananda.
Yeah, a little bit resemblance, that's true. So, next section. Causing others' faith in the real thing, it is the best type of collection. So, collecting donations, but causing others' faith in the real thing, that is the best type of collection. This is an amazing pastime. Whenever he collected donations, Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay always dressed in a formal attire consisting of a coat and pants. One day he visited the house of a Sethaji, which means a wealthy person. He rang the doorbell, and the owner personally answered the door. When Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay introduced himself as a member of the Gaudiya Math, the Sethaji, Gaudiya Math, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu took a seat in a nearby chair, saying nothing in reply. The Sethaji, now irate, he repeated, I said I have no faith in the Gaudiya Math. And this time Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu responded, yes, I heard you. This is exactly why I have come to your house, to generate your faith in the Gaudiya Math. Even before I came, I knew that you had no faith in the Gaudiya Math. For if you had, you could not have resisted visiting. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu then expertly explained the aim of the Gaudiya Math's mission and its unique specialities. Being highly influenced by Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu's scholarly presentation, the Sethaji gratefully offered him a large donation. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu refused the donation. I have not come for a donation, he said. Believe me when I say I have not come only to generate, believe me when I say I have come only to generate your faith in the Gaudiya Math. Then with great respect, the Sethaji personally drove Sri Atul Chandra back to the Gaudiya Math, where he received darshan of Srila Prabhupada and offered the donation to him directly. Thereafter, he visited the Gaudiya Math regularly. You know, I mean, he so much reminds me of Srila Prabhupada's boldness, and
When he took the TV in England,
Yeah.
And they just took it.
Yeah, that story. The Radha Londonishwar. Oh. Next section is delivering an offender. Once Srila Prabhupada took Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay and an entourage to preach in Kanpur. So while Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu went to the city for a short time to collect donations, the local district magistrate came to visit Srila Prabhupada. And during their conversation, the magistrate made a derogatory comment to Srila Prabhupada. He said, "Most of your followers seem highly educated. Is it your mission to turn educated people into mendicants?" And with this, the magistrate got up and abruptly left. Later, when Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu returned to see Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada informed him of his encounter with the magistrate. And as Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu listened to Srila Prabhupada, he noticed that the magistrate's criticism had made Srila Prabhupada unhappy. He immediately hailed a horse cart, and he went to the magistrate's house. And when he arrived, he told him, "Srila Prabhupada is an extraordinary personality. He is a personal associate of Bhagavan. Your disrespectful comment has ensured your total ruin. You have played with fire, and now 14 generations of your family will have to suffer in hell." The district magistrate became frightened. He humbly asked Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu what he must do to make amends. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu instructed him to beg Srila Prabhupada for forgiveness and serve him somehow. The magistrate and Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu at once returned to the mutt, where Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu implored Srila Prabhupada, "Please be kind to this man and absolve him of his offense to your lotus feet." Srila Prabhupada then spoke to the magistrate on many topics, and the magistrate served him by offering a donation of 500 rupees, which was a lot at that time. It's something like 50,000 rupees now. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu accepted a huge responsibility when he resolved to save the district magistrate from committing a serious offense. This anecdote demonstrates many of Srila Goswami Maharaj's transcendental qualities. He had firm conviction in the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. He could recognize the awful fate in store for those who offended Srila Prabhupada, and he mercifully strived to find a way for them to atone for their offenses. And by this he delivered many offenders. And like a true well-wisher, he did whatever he could to cultivate auspiciousness on their behalf. Next section, defending Srila Prabhupada and his followers. While Srila Prabhupada was heading to perform Sri Braj Mangala Parikrama with his associates one year, Sri Halagu Lala, the head of the managing committee of the Sri Banki Bihari temple, issued a statement to almost all of the prominent temples of Vrindavan, notifying them that Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would soon arrive with all his followers. "They are all Harijans," he said. "He and his followers are not to be allowed entrance into our temples." You never heard that? So when Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay came to hear of this, he took a group of his Brahmin-born god brothers, including Sri Srimad Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, who was then Hayagriva Brahmachari, that's Bhakti Dvaita Madhav Goswami, Sri Narottamananda Brahmachari, who later became Sri Srimad Bhakti Kamala Madhusudan Goswami Maharaj, Sri Pranavananda Brahmachari later became Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, and others, to meet with the Gosai, or the head priest, of the Radha Madan Mohan temple. Now this is the Radha Banki Bihari. If you want to go to the Radha Madan Mohan temple. So in conversing with the respected Gosai, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu asked him, do we, who have taken birth in Brahmin families, do we seem like fallen deviants to you? Have we not conducted ourselves according to the words of scriptures, when we resolve to follow the path of pure Vaishnava Dharma? Srila Prabhupada has propagated the principles of Daivi Varnashram Dharma, the social designation of individuals, according not to race or familial lineage, but innate propensities. To maintain a mundane conception of Srila Prabhupada will bring only ill fortune to the world. Moreover, may I remind you that I am Atul Chandra Bandopadhyay. When the Brahmins of your family approached our family, seeking the hand of my daughter in marriage, I forbade it. I told them, we are Kulin Brahmanas. How could we possibly consider allowing our daughter to marry into your family when we despise even the idea of dining in close proximity to you? The Gosai begged for forgiveness, and he accompanied Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu to see Srila Prabhupada. He then brought Srila Prabhupada and the Parikrama party for darshan of Sri Radha Madan Mohanji, and he conferred great respect unto Srila Prabhupada. Observing the conduct of the Sri Madan Mohanji Temple Gosai, the head priests of all the other prominent temples of Vrindavan also accorded befitting honor and respect to Srila Prabhupada. It was only the Gosai of the Sri Banki Bihari Temple who maintained some objection to allowing Srila Prabhupada's disciples to enter his temple, saying that Sri Bihariji would be frightened by the tridandas the sannyasis carried. The deity would be frightened. And when Srila Prabhupada heard of this, he said, fine, if this is the case, we shall not enter the Banki Bihari temple. We do not wish to frighten Thakurji. So to this day, on our parikrama, we don't go into the Banki Bihari temple. I have another story, but I'm not going to tell it. It's in relation to how blasphemous they are toward the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a very, very heavy thing that I experienced there. The next section is titled Collecting from a Materialist. Here's another beautiful painting photograph. Oh, Krishna, what did I do? Oh God, wait. How did that happen?
Should I just grab the actual book?
What?
Should I grab the book?
Yeah, you can do that because that has disappeared for some strange reason. Oh, it's right there. Okay. That's what I hate about these things. At any moment, everything can disappear. Okay. Now the next section is titled Collecting from a Materialist. Once Sri Atul Chandra Bandopadhyay took his godbrother, oh, this is a great story. He took his godbrother Sri Srimad Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami to visit a miserly businessman in Madras, now Chennai, who spoke only Tamil, of which the two godbrothers knew not one word. And before their visit, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu told Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, I will communicate with him through hand gestures only. All you must do is advance toward him with your tridanda and back off when I tell you. And why exactly am I supposed to run back and forth with my Tridanda? Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj asked. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu replied, he will either think that I am depriving him of a blessing from Sri Narayan, who is embodied by your Tridanda, or that I am protecting him from you turning him to ashes with it. When Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj advanced toward the businessman with his Tridanda during their meeting, he stopped him and held up his 10 fingers, pointing to the businessman. The businessman, in return, held up 1 finger. Again, Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj advanced toward the businessman until Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu stopped him. This time, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu held up 9 fingers. As soon as Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu stood up, as if ready to leave, the merchant made a gesture, signaling him to stay, and then went inside his house. Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj asked Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu, what does this mean, holding up 5 fingers? Then he said, Maharaj, I have no idea. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu answered, it could be 5 rupees, 50 rupees, 500, or something else. Whatever it is, let us wait and see. The merchant then brought 500 rupees from inside, put it in Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj's hand. He then begged him to bless him on the forehead with his Tridanda, and Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj obliged. And as they were leaving, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu kicked the ground at the doorway. And when Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj asked why he did that, he said, Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai. Jai Radhe Jai. So he kicked the ground at the doorway as they were leaving. And then Srila Sridhar Goswami asked why he did that. And then he said, I do not want to deal with this kind of person ever again. Otherwise, I fear I will become a covetous materialist, a Vishayi. I am kicking this man's association, kicking it with spite. So Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj would often say about him, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu was like a radish farmer. Muli, you know Muli? Yeah. He's like a radish farmer whose crop is completely uprooted during the harvesting. He would approach a person once, he would receive what he could, and never return. Others, however, were like eggplant farmers, whose crop continues to give even after harvesting. They would repeatedly go to the same person to acquire whatever they needed. Neither is intrinsically better than the other. They are simply different approaches. The best approach is always that which is most favorable for the service of Sri Hari according to time, place, and circumstance. Now, the next section is a queen's donation. One Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay stayed in a temple in Orissa. And at that time, the temple's services were being funded by an elderly queen who was popularly known as Rani Mata. So one day, Rani Mata sent her servants to inquire whether Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu's stay there was comfortable enough and whether he was experiencing any inconvenience. So Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu replied that everything was fine, except that he was having a hard time sleeping without a pillow. Rani Mata then graciously sent him a pillow and told him he could keep it. And as soon as Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu received the pillow, he set off for Sri Dham Mayapur and took it with him. And upon his arrival at Sri Yogpit, he opened the pillow and found about 2,500 rupees inside. Traditionally, In Indian culture, it is men who offer donations to sadhus and not women. And Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu was perceptive enough to understand that by sending her servant to check up on him, Rani Mata was looking for an opportunity to serve him in some way. And his request for a pillow was actually meant as a chance for her to offer a donation in secret. Do you see how clever? Such were his wondrous ways of collecting donations. Oh, this next one is really posing as a lawyer for the service of the Gaudiya Math. At the bidding of the queen of the Sitapur district in Naimisharanya, a man resolved to donate land for the construction of a Gaudiya Math there. Okay, so this is near Naimisharanya. And sometime later, however, an Indian civil service ICS officer who was a foreigner, he complained that the queen ought to donate the land to her subjects if she had so much. He questioned how the locals would benefit by giving land to outsiders from Bengal or anywhere else. And hearing about this, the donor retracted his pledge to give land to the Gaudiya Math devotees. Sometime later, Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay overheard the devotees. He was discussing the matter at the Sitapur train station while waiting for a train to Kolkata. As fate would have it, their train was 3 hours late. And so he informed the devotees he would pay the man a visit. On the way, he purchased a notebook and he tucked it under the arm of his coat to make himself appear as a professional. He approached the man who withdrew his pledge and he said, "I am the Gaudiya Math's legal advisor, and I am here to sue you for defamation. When you promised land to them, they printed notices in many newsletters and magazines about the proposed math in Naimisharanya. But now that you have gone back on your word, their name will be tarnished." Then the man explained his position and showed Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu what the ICS officer had written. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu shouted at the man, "What does that fool know? We want this land not for the sake of taking, but for giving. We will develop this area by investing assets gathered from elsewhere. There is not a single person in your entire state who would come forward to develop this area like we would. And even if someone were to come forward, he would end up costing you much more than he would invest. Our investment in this community, on the other hand, would be greater, say 10 times greater, than the value of the land you would give us. But never mind that. The main point is that you must make good on your promise, otherwise I will have no choice but to file a lawsuit against you." And when the man finally agreed to donate the land to the Gaudiya Math, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu insisted that he pay a 10,000 rupee fine for the inconvenience that he caused. Ultimately, the man agreed to pay a fine of 5,000 rupees. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu collected the fine and returned to the train station in time to make his train. Is that not,
Transcendental character.
and Prabhupada-esque, like not afraid of anything. He's had such a unique personality. Now, the next point is his presence of mind. Before Srila Prabhupada sent Sri Atul Chandra Bandyopadhyay abroad to preach, he asked Ernst George Schulz, who was a German disciple of his, whose initiated name was Sadananda Das. He asked him, "What title should I give Atul Chandra when I send him to preach in the West? I need to give him a title that properly conveys his superiority to all the preachers I have sent until now. And Sri Sadananda Prabhu suggested the title Missionary in Charge, which Srila Prabhupada liked. He then gave this title to Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu, and he sent him to preach abroad. Now, Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu did not accept even 1 paisa from the mutt for his overseas preaching. The donations he collected abroad funded the entire venture. As you know, Bhakti Hriday Bhan Maharaj was fully funded, but not Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. So Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu, one day, the housekeeper where he was staying in England, she informed him, "A large envelope with your name on it has come, but it is too big to fit in the letterbox. It is hanging out. You best retrieve it now." And when Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu opened the letter, he found that the king of Bardhaman, he had sent him a check in his name. And although he did not have an English bank account, he decided to go to the bank anyway. So at the bank, the manager told him, "We cannot cash your check unless we get a signature from someone who can verify your identity." It just so happened that a photograph of Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu shaking hands with the Marquis of Zetland had been published in the newspaper that day. Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu saw a newspaper lying on the manager's desk. He took it, opened it to the page with his picture. He showed it to the manager and asked him, "Who is this person in this photograph?" Then the manager read the title on the bottom of the photograph, quote, "Indian monk A.B. Goswami and Marquis of Zetland," he said. The manager told him, "Am I not the very same person?" Atul Chandra Prabhu questioned the manager. Then the manager looked at the photo, and he looked back at him a few times. And then, "So," Sri Atul Chandra Prabhu prodded, "What do you say?" "It is definitely you." "Then you yourself can verify my identity and sign." The manager did just that. Such was Srila Goswami Maharaj's presence of mind. Now, the next section is maintaining faith in disheartening situations. After Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, the Saraswat Gaudiya mission faced a host of disturbances. During that time, a certain distinguished personality made the following comment about a particular disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He said, "I do not trust him when he says, 'Ha, yes,' nor do I trust his brother when he sarcastically says, 'Yes.' The mouths of the fathers of those who have faith in their ha's and who's will be full of these two brothers' stool. They are cheating us. We should teach them a lesson." Srila Goswami Maharaj replied, not ferociously, but peacefully, according to his tranquil nature. And he said, "Bhagavan is all-knowing." You know who this is referring to? Huh?
Srila Maharaj and his brother. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, I don't know who is the person that made this statement. But a certain distinguished personality made the following comment about a particular disciple of Srila Prabhupada.
And how did he respond to him, in writing or in his presence?
Well, we're going to read that right now. So then Srila Goswami, he said, "Bhagavan is all-knowing, and he always guides and protects his devotees. If, while being cheated by the Vaishnavas, we maintain faith in them, nevertheless, even at the cost of detriment, that faith will be the genesis of our future happiness. Yeah, that's just one section on its own. Acquiring land in Mayapur is the next section. From the very beginning, Srila Goswami Maharaj was entirely disinterested in procuring land and in building a mutt in Mayapur. He would repeatedly say, already in Sridham Mayapur are Srila Prabhupada's Sri Chaitanya Mutt and Srimad Maharaj's Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Mutt. What then is the necessity for me to toil to build another place? I do, however, want my godbrothers to accrue as much land as possible, because otherwise undesirable people will create establishments there in the future and try to tarnish the sanctity of the Dham. So he would also say, I will provide my godbrothers with as much money as they need to purchase and develop land. But with this, they must accept the responsibility of properly maintaining their establishments. And Srila Goswami Maharaj possessed incredible foresight. Today, many undesirable factions have established themselves in Sridham Mayapur, and they engage in many activities opposed to the cultivation of bhakti. Sri Srimad Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj was insistent that Srila Goswami Maharaj establish a mutt in Sridham Mayapur, and so Srila Goswami Maharaj, yielding to the request of his godbrother, he purchased a plot of land there. On the day that the foundation was to be consecrated by performing an auspicious cornerstone laying ceremony beneath the shade of an acacia tree there, Srila Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj did not conduct the ceremony himself, but he had Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj do it. Our Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Mutt provided the mridangas, kartals, and asanas for that ceremony. I consider myself supremely fortunate and blessed to have witnessed and heard the heartfelt kirtans sung by those who had taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada, their exemplary and genteel interactions, and the profound Harikatha they spoke that day. And afterwards, devotees distributed nothing more than a light, hollow sugar candy called batasa as prasad. But no one was dissatisfied. Everyone was quite pleased. The simple end to the grand festival brought to mind a verse that I had learned when I was a child. Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj telling. I can barely read it. Aja yudhe rishi shraddhe prabhate megha ambura dampatye kalahe chaiva pabharambhe lagu kriya. The sparing of rams, the service rendered by saints, the sound of thunder in the mornings, and the squabbles between a husband and wife are loud in the beginning and quiet in the end, accomplished ultimately by the smallest of gestures. So although I had always felt that this verse was not applicable in modern times, I realized it was most certainly relevant to Srila Goswami Maharaj's feast that day. Next, an example of his humility. While Srila Goswami Maharaj's mutt in Sridham Mayapur was under construction, he stayed in Guru Maharaj's Bhajan Kutir in our Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Mutt. He was highly punctual. He would come and go at exactly the same time every day. And one day, for some reason, he arrived at our mutt 5 minutes earlier than normal. Before entering Guru Maharaj's Bhajan Kutir, he asked us in all earnestness, Prabhus, today I have come 5 minutes early. May I come inside the mutt, or should I atone for my unpunctuality by waiting outside? Next section, accept only that service which you can properly manage. When Srila Goswami Maharaj would host festivals in his mutt, he would invite only 1 or 2 devotees from each mutt. He would explain, by his own conduct, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has taught that as etiquette dictates, we must invite only as many Vaishnavas as we are capable of serving at one time without losing a respectful attitude. If we invite too many devotees, we run the risk of making offenses due to our inability to attentively serve every one of them in a befitting manner. Next section, his deep respect for the Dham. When Srila Goswami Maharaj would walk from Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Mat to his mat, his servants, Sri Gauradas Prabhu, and we would support him from either side. There's a little picture drawing here. One day, as we were leaving Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Mat, we saw Nilu, that is Sri Yogapit's generator room guard. He was driving a new bicycle rickshaw, a vehicle that had been only recently introduced in Sri Dham Mayapur. And saying this, Sri Gauradas Prabhu asked Srila Goswami Maharaj, Maharaj Ji, would you like to go by rickshaw? Srila Goswami Maharaj replied gravely, me? On a rickshaw? In the holy Dham? Never. This will never happen. I know well that you people, you will all ride in cars in the future, but you will not get a license to do so from me. And it is a fact that in his entire life, he never sat in a rickshaw or car in the Dham. When traveling to the Dham in a car or rickshaw, he would stop at the limits of the Dham and start walking. Sri Gauradas Prabhu said, Maharaj, we are afraid you might fall and injure yourself if you walk all the time. Srila Goswami Maharaj joked, that is your problem, not mine. Later, when he reached his mat, he loudly called to another of his dear servants, Sri Van Bihari Baba, O Van Baba, this Gora has just about killed me today. He made me walk all the way here. I am so worn out. His relationships with his disciples were always sweet and humorous. Next section, which will be the last one. Everything is justified in service. Once Srila Goswami Maharaj and his servant, Sri Gauradas Prabhu, came to our Mayapur branch of Sri Chaitanya Gaudiya Mat to visit the Goshala, which I managed in those days. Srila Maharaj saw two healthy, happy calves there, and he asked me, how old are these calves? Maharaj Ji, they are about 1 year old, I replied. Without hesitating, he offered this advice. If you turn them into oxen, you will be able to get a great amount of work out of them. And when Sri Gauradas Prabhu heard this, he said, Maharaj, would you have dared to even suggest such a thing, let alone to do it, had you been living with your family? Then he replied, no, Srila Goswami Maharaj replied, I would have been declared an outcast and removed from our society. But I am no longer a Brahmin. I am a transcendental mlecha, a divine outcast of sorts. If an activity befitting a mlecha is performed with the intention of serving Sri Guru, Vaishnavas, and Bhagavan, it is considered spiritual, not mundane. Everything is justified in service. So there's just a couple more little sections, but our time has run out. And now it's time for Sri Gaur Artik. So Sri Atul Chandra Bandhopadhyay ki jai. Sri Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Radha Vinod Vihari Radha Govinda Jiyo ki jai.